my name's Talya Kingston. I'm WAM Theatre's Associate Artistic Director and the production dramaturg for WAM and Central Square Theatre's production of Galileo's Daughter by Jessica Dickey. I'm delighted to be speaking today to the celebrated playwright and stage and screen actor Jessica Dickey, who in addition to Galileo's Daughter has written several other award-winning plays, including The Rembrandt, The Amish Project, Row After Row, and most recently The Convent, which premiered off-Broadway. Welcome, Jessica.
Thank you so much for having me.
So Galileo's Daughter tells the story of a writer who, like yourself, travels to Florence to research the letters written to the scientist Galileo by his favorite daughter, Maria Celeste. I wonder if you can begin by telling us what initially inspired you to want to dig into this subject.
Yes, well, Davis Sobel wrote a wonderful book called Galileo's Daughter, which sort of translates the letters, tracks a bit more about her, sort of a way of looking at what happened to Galileo, but with this new element involved, which was his little known and very brilliant daughter, who was clearly a protege of his and was highly active and involved and influential throughout his life and career. She copied his manuscripts. When he was picked up by the Inquisition, she lobbied tirelessly on his behalf to his, the intelligentsia and the upper class, people of influence, the aristocrats. So she even found his real estate, but she did all of this from the confines of a convent. She's really impressive and in that way. So I think I was immediately just blown away that she existed and that I didn't know about her. And then in the process, and I applied for a Sloan grant to write a play about her. And then in the process of doing so, my life blew up. And so the play became this sort of toothy hybrid of learning about this incredibly brilliant and unknown daughter of Galileo. And the play is also about a playwright going through a personal crisis, trying to learn about the brilliant and unknown daughter of Galileo and how those two stories push up against each other.
Yeah, so let's talk a bit more about the element of autobiography in the play. I'm sort of personally fascinated by autobiographical plays, and especially when they're written by actors as well as writers. So I wonder about the connection you ended up feeling to Maria Celeste and in the writing of this play that made your own journey the way in. That makes sense.
Yeah, it's kind of harrowing to do that. I wouldn't really wish it on myself. And what people I think sometimes don't realize is that we're not always in control of these things as the writer. When you're inside writing something, there's of course somewhat the plan you've set out with, and then at some point, if you're lucky, sooner than later, the writing starts to tell you what it wants to be and what's happening, and the sort of the details of the writing emerge from the writing itself. It's not like you're sitting there thinking, and then this, and that's exactly what happens. It starts to take on a life of its own, and that is kind of what happened here. And I remember sort of trepidatiously watching that occur as I was working on the play and thinking, oh God, please, please don't put your autobiographical stuff in this. Like, it was so terrifying. And yet that's what the play demanded. And I think it ultimately came down to, themes of faith. What does it cost to have a revelation? What does it cost to speak your revelation? And what is loyalty? What do we choose? What to serve? And what concessions we make to stay with what we believe in? And then what do we sacrifice, or what are the costs when we choose to speak our truth against what we've claimed we will serve? Like these questions of loyalty and faith and personal truth and personal sovereignty. It was kind of a crashing together of all those things. And the result is the play that we'll get to see together.
So one final question on that note, would you ever want to play the writer yourself, or is that step too far into the
I don't really particularly feel called to do that. The only time I've played my own writing was the Amish Project. And that was sort of that also sort of emerged out of the writing. I didn't really, it wasn't like I thought, I'm going to write a play that I'm in. I started writing this thing. And then it sort of emerged in the writing at some point that I was the one speaking. It was because it was that play was kind of like hearing voices in a tunnel or something. Um, and but in terms of with writer, no, I like very much that it's a theatrical event that's interpreted by the instruments at hand, the actors and the design team and the direction and the dramaturgical staff and the, you know, the production staff and crew. It's that always felt like the way that the play wanted to be ultimately held for an audience was through interpreters.
How does your background as an actor help you as a playwright in writing?
Oh man, I think I think it's simply just having more, you know, logging those 10,000 hours of understanding how to clasp arms with a live audience and what is possible in that kind of activity, right? Like it's like when you've been on stage with an audience over long periods of time, as I've had the good fortune to do as an actor, you start to really understand what actors are capable of, the musculature that they use and that they specialize in to engage and keep an audience in a live event in front of them for hopefully not much more than 2 hours. and 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 vice versa, you start to understand like what an audience is actually capable of, like how fast an audience is, how much they want to catch up to the play, they don't want to be spoon-fed the play. Like you're in other words, I think it gives one the ability to take real risks and leaps and to do surprising things in terms of like narrative jumps. You can jump rather than ramp a lot more than you think, and an audience is so facile and fast, as are the actors, that I think it's enabled me to be courageous with choices in the writing.
There's certainly some courageous choices in this. We have like characters, actors who play multiple characters in the course of a single page of script.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
really exciting, I
Yeah,
think,
thanks.
for the actors involved. So Galileo's Daughter isn't the only play you've written about women in religious organizations. So you've already mentioned the Amish Project, the Convent. What draws you to this subject? What do you see in sort of women inside religious organizations?
Yeah, I've asked myself that a lot actually. I have a sister who is clergy,
Mm.
very, very progressive, cool, smart, salty clergy lady. And she's my best friend. So I think, uh, in other words, I'm not allergic to organized religion or spiritual calling. And I'm particularly interested in the like subversion of women being in those spiritual leadership positions. Um, but I have to confess that I think being a playwright is a spiritual calling. And I think going into the theater is a spiritual calling. And that theater, while not a religious endeavor, I think it is a spiritual endeavor. And I think it's a place where inevitably a kind of healing wants to happen. I kind of like, you know, the words and the action of the play, the characters make this kind of kindling, and then the audience arrives and we start like blowing on it and like and the fire takes, you know, I hope and so that we all leave like a little warmed and changed by that thing we did together for the last, in the case of Galileo's Daughter, about 75 minutes. Right. And so I think that automatically kind of dovetails back into spiritual questions when I approach a play, or what makes me want to write a play ultimately often is a spiritual question that I don't feel I necessarily understand totally, but I want to understand more.
Mhm.
And that's usually what tells me I'm on the trail of writing a play.
That's beautiful. Thank you. So there's an element of time travel in this play, which puts our contemporary time in conversation with the early 1600s when Galileo and his daughter were living and working in Tuscany. And I'm wondering what you think that this story has to tell us. I have my own thoughts about this, by the way, but has to tell us about science and religion and politics of our time, and particularly in the United States where things are kind of crescendoing. Is putting on a play always feels a little bit like a political act because you're putting this particular story on stage, you're choosing it. So I'm wondering if there are ideas and thoughts to take from this play that would help guide us in this moment, or reflects on this moment.
Oh, that's a really challenging question.
Yes.
No, not at all. Not at all. Yeah, I think, I mean, I'll confess the first thing immediately that pops into my head, which is just that, I wasn't thinking about that when I wrote the play. That like these things, the play sort of emerged out of this very personal attraction to Galileo's daughter, and that she existed and that I didn't know about her, and
Mm,
that she was so impressive. And I find her story, including how her story ends, which I won't give away for the sake of the audience coming to the play, but I find it very moving, and inspiring in many ways. And I think that alone, like getting to underline or sort of reverberate or magnify a story like that, is of course very useful in our current moment, where I think we're all trying to figure out, as contemporary people, where do we choose to put our vote, like quite literally, like what is Jesse's right action, like what is the right action in my life in front of me, what should I be doing, how can I be doing more,
mhm,
in whatever battlefields resonate as most authentic to me, and what I care about. And I think everyone is overwhelmed with that question.
mm,
um, and it's interesting to watch a figure like Galileo, whom we only know of as someone that literally reframed how we understand the working universe around us. Like, like he succeeded and saw something first before anyone else did, and could prove it. And yet how that directly put him in great conflict with his time and a cause that he held very dear, which was his spiritual beliefs, and his religion that he was devout to. That's incredibly moving, that like just a crossroads, an unshakable conflict right there of cross purposes of, and what do you choose and how do you choose. And um I guess I don't have a direct answer, except that I think the question is a potent one and a really good one that I hope the audience is carrying in their lap and in their chest while they watch the play. Just watch these three people, Galileo and his daughter and this writer, and then all the people that they cycle past and through and negotiate with to their ends, to their task, um, to see themselves and ask themselves, well, where am I in this, and what am I to do to live a good life and to find honor and truth in my own path. That would be a really wonderful thing for people to leave the theater thinking about.
that's really lovely. Thank you. Um, before I let you go,
It's a clever way of saying I don't know.
no, you do though. I think you answered it really well. I'd love to know if there's anything you're currently working on that you'd like to tell us about. What are you currently doing? Writing,
Yeah.
filming, all the things.
I'm working on a movie that's about a group. It's based on a real story, but it's about a group of women who formed a motorcycle stunt group in the
Wow.
UK in the 1970s. It's really yummy, fun, challenging, very, very cool topic. And that's my first time writing a film, so that's been really, really exciting. I'm My sister and I wrote a book called Sistering, The Art of Holding Close and Letting Go, that we is sort of about growing up as a playwright and a pastor, and sisters, and kind of how we help each other with our writing, how writing for the theater and writing for the church have a lot in common, and a lot to teach each other, and how we've maintained our relationship despite our lives growing in very different directions. So that still feels very alive, and we're still thinking about how to continue on the success of that book, because it was really joyful to write that together. And then I'm working on this play that's called The Door, which also has, I guess, a time hop theme, since I'm slightly obsessed with time. But the entry point of that play is really, I interviewed a lot of senior citizens about their sex lives, like what their sensual life is like in the latter half of life, and that led to actually a multi-generational play about how weird it is to be a person in a body. um, that's kind of, I think of it, I affectionately call it my rom-com. But
Right.
I'm, yeah, so I'm currently sort of working on that play and trying to find a home for it. I feel very lucky to get to be a writer.
Well, we feel lucky to be sharing your play, and thank you so much for trusting us with it. And thank you for taking the time to speak with me today.
It's my pleasure. And everybody out there, we're going to be doing talkbacks on this play, and I'm showing up because I can't wait to be with this company around this play. So please stay tuned on when we can discuss this more together in person.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.